Today we're out here in rainy Southern California taking a look at the all-new 2016 Volvo XC90. The new XC90 is built on an entirely different platform than every other Volvo currently on sale around the world. This is Volvo's new SPA platform, and it brings with it Volvo's new philosophy when it comes to designing vehicles. You should know that halogen headlamps are standard on the XC90, but there is a vision package available even on the base model that will allow you to upgrade to this very distinctive looking headlamp module. The other big change up front that you may not notice right away is that we have a camera right here integrated into the Volvo logo. And the Volvo logo is actually, once again, a 3D Volvo logo. That's because the radar sensor is not up here. It actually is up there in the windscreen. The old XC90 was the longest Volvo that they'd ever made, but this one grows just a little bit over the previous generation. It's now 194.8 inches long. That makes this about 5 inches shorter than the new Audi Q7. That would be the new one coming up, not the one that's on sale right now in the United States. Although Volvo is comparing this model to the Mercedes-Benz ML, I actually think it compares a little bit better to the Mercedes-Benz GL because this is a 3-row crossover. This is 6 inches shorter than that Mercedes, so it's about the same size difference as you get with the Audi Q7. This is about 2 inches longer, however, than a BMW X5. The biggest change in this generation versus the last generation XC90 is that we have a wheelbase that's stretched almost 5 inches over that last generation. That really improves rear seat legroom especially. Out back, you'll notice that Volvo has softened the very sexy hip shape that we had in previous generations. So it's a little bit less horizontal, a little bit more angled, and we have tail lamps that now have red turn signals. The one thing that hasn't changed, however, is Volvo's dedication to cargo practicality. So even though it appears that this glass is a little bit further raked forward than the last generation, it really isn't that big of a difference. It's very, very slight. This is still a 3-row crossover with a lot of cargo practicality baked in. Another significant change is the inclusion of an adaptive air suspension system. Now, the previous generation XC90 had 8.9 inches of ground clearance. This one can have up to 10.5. In addition to changing the way the vehicle feels based on the press of a button, as well as giving you that extra ride height, it also allows you to lower the vehicle's ride height when you want to load cargo in the back. So there's a button right back here. I'm pressing that, and as you can see, the vehicle is lowering itself down to the lowest height possible, so that makes it easier to put large cargo in the back. The air suspension and the all-wheel drive system do have an off-road mode, but if you do plan on taking your XC90 a little bit further off the beaten path, there is an optional black body side cladding package that makes it look a little bit more like that 2002 XC90. Well, there are a variety of engines available in other world markets for the XC90. In the United States, we just get one at the moment. This is a 2-liter direct injection, turbocharged and supercharged 4-cylinder engine. It produces a whopping 316 horsepower, which is 16 more than you will find in BMW's 3-liter turbocharged engine in the X5. This produces 295 pound-feet of torque, which is a huge amount of torque. That's only 5 pound-feet less than you'll find in that X5. This engine is mated to an Aisin manufactured 8-speed automatic transmission, sending power to all 4 wheels via a Haldex all-wheel drive system. The other reason we have a small engine, of course, is fuel economy, and this engine will give you 20 miles per gallon city, 25 highway, and 22 combined. That's 1 better than the BMW X5 and 3 better than the Mercedes GL450. Because direct injection engines can sometimes be a little bit noisy or a little bit diesely, we actually have a soft touch foamy engine cover right here that's designed to absorb the engine sounds. If you want more power than this, then Volvo does have an answer for you, but it is not a bigger engine. It actually is a hybrid drivetrain. And if you opt for that hybrid T8 model, then you will get 400 horsepower and nearly 500 pound-feet of torque. Because this platform was not designed with the V8 engine that we got in the last generation XC90 or even the inline 5 or inline 6 engines we got in the last generation, they were able to push the front wheels a little bit closer to the front of the vehicle. That engine change has also allowed Volvo to shave about 300 pounds off of the weight of this model versus the last generation model. As you'd expect from Volvo, front seat comfort is excellent. The seat now contorts in a number of ways that we didn't get in the past. So we have optional adjustable side bolsters, an optional thigh extender, 4-way lumbar support as well. By default, the seats are heated in every model. We can optionally get them ventilated as well, and Volvo tells us that we may even get a seat massage feature in the future. As we've come to expect from Volvo, we still have a mechanical tilt telescopic steering column with a decent range of motion. Second row comfort is excellent in the XC90, but I'm going to put this one step below the QX60, which does have really comfortable second row seats. We do get reclining seat backs in this generation, and the seat bottom cushion actually slides a little further forward when you recline the seat to make it a little bit more comfortable. The recline mechanism is in a very good place as well. As we saw in the previous generation, the front seats also slide forward and backward, but we get a little bit more motion to help you apportion the space a little bit better. Volvo has not only retained their 40-20-40 middle seat, but they've also given this center seat the ability ability to slide forward and backward independent of the outboard seats. That's a little bit important because if you get the optional child booster cushion, right here my leg is in the way, it is a 2-stage booster. That means your kid can be a little bit closer to you up front. The third row is a little bit compact, but getting back here is fairly easy. We just slide that second row forward, pull it back into place, and it will snap right back there where we left it. One nice touch is that because this center seat moves independently of the others, you can fold it, you can leave it in place, or you can leave it up, whichever way you'd like to do it. You can also move it further forward than the outboard seats to give you a little bit more room in the back. Although the seats in the back share the same headrest design as the rest of the rows in this vehicle, and these rear seats are very comfortable in themselves, they're a little bit close to the floor for adults. You'll also notice that as with many 3-row crossovers, even luxury crossovers, the parts and plastics quality declines as we go to the rear. Compared to the last generation XC90, cargo capacity is roughly the same. That means we can still fit a large roller bag like this right here behind the 3rd row seat. Mine wasn't caught there, but we can't close the tailgate with that bag in that position. We do have to rotate it around to that position in order to close the tailgate. If we move that bag aside, you will find a cargo divider in the back, which is very handy, especially if you frequently keep your 3rd row seats in the folded position. It has a grocery bag holder, that sort of thing going on right there. We'll find some additional storage under the cargo load floor. We also find an automotive unicorn under there, which is a temporary spare tire. Overall, I'm going to give the trunk comfort score 9 out of 10 points. We do get an awful lot of room back here in the cargo area. We also get the ability with the air suspension to lower this cargo area, which is a very handy feature. Power tailgate right up here as you'd expect as well. Now, one thing you'll notice that I haven't showed you around in the back is the subwoofer, and that's because the subwoofer is actually located in the ceiling, helping free up some of that additional cargo room. If you're wondering where your warning triangle goes, fear not, it's right there in the tailgate. Because this is a luxury vehicle, we get height adjustable seat belts for both the rear passengers as well as the driver and the front passenger. You can see these new headrest designs from Volvo right here on this side. Now, this seat is perforated because this is the optional seat with the optional ventilation. Seats are heated up front by default in all US bound models. Again, keeping in mind we are in the upper end trims, we do have the optional Bowers and Wilkins sound system with these metal speaker grates right down there on the door. We also have some additional speakers on the dashboard. It's a very attractive look. We have more stitched leather going on right here on the door, some open pore wood trim, quite a lot of open pore wood trim actually, and then more leather and pleather going on here. As you'd expect in a vehicle in this price category, when you go down lower towards those little storage cubbies down there on the bottom of the door, even those areas are all soft touch plastics as well. One thing you'll notice in the back is that the quality doesn't decline. We get the same stitched leather on the top of the dashboard, stitched leather armrests, soft touch plastics all the way around, a large portion of wood trim, and even available rear sunshades. Keep in mind we are in the top end trim. You'll notice we have a very modern seat design right here where the extending thigh cushion sort of slides on top of a portion of the seat cushion. It's a very modern, futuristic looking design. Moving on over to the dashboard, you'll notice we have an awful lot of stitched leather going on. Again, those Bowers and Wilkins speakers right up there up top. This whole face is all stitched leather as well. We have a relatively large glove compartment, and it's also air conditioned in the XC90 for the first time. The biggest thing you'll notice about this interior obviously is this very large touchscreen infotainment and navigation system. It is standard on all XC90 models. This system looks like a tablet computer and works very much like a tablet computer. We have some selected information nuggets here on the main screen, going very briefly around this, and you'll notice you can touch them and it'll maximize them. So we have navigation, we have media, we have phone right there. You can also swipe gestures in the system, so we can swipe left, swipe right for various system functions and system features. We have a home button which will take us back to the home screen, and if we click on various items, you'll notice we have additional pop-ups like adjusting the temperature right over there, adjusting the seat heating, seat cooling, the steering wheel heating, etc. Because we're inside the T6 model, we have a more traditional shifter right here. You do find a different shifter in the T8 that is crystal. You've probably seen that advertised. Now you notice that we have more of that open pore wood trim going on right here. We actually have 2 storage cubbies, so if we push this one up front, that goes to reveal a very small storage cubby right there in front of the shifter. If we pull this one back, we get a very large storage cubby as well as 2 large cup holders and a 12-volt power outlet. This is also where you'll find the start-stop toggle, so you stop the engine by rotating that way, you start the engine by rotating that way. This is the drive mode selector. We are in the model with the optional air suspension, so this will adjust not only the way the engine and transmission operate, but also the way the suspension behaves. Behind that, we have an electric parking brake, and we finally have auto brake hold. We have a moderately sized center armrest, revealing a somewhat small storage cubby. I was a little bit surprised by the size of that. However, we do have the 4-zone climate control in our model, and likely that takes up some of that space. This is where you will find the single USB input and the auxiliary input for your tunes. And if we take a look at that rear climate control module right there. You'll notice this is a true 4-zone climate control, so we can actually adjust the temperature of each of those zones independently with one another, and our model has the optional rear heated seats. Over on the driver's side, we now have Volvo's latest full LCD instrument cluster. This is actually quite unique in this segment because the only other vehicle I can think of that uses this kind of LCD really is the Range Rover line. You'll notice that it zooms in and out, it's all very interactive, and we have a full navigation display right there in between the speedometer and the tachometer. This is easily the most interactive LCD instrument cluster that's available in this segment. However, it's not quite as adjustable as I would like. One of the other unique features that we get in this generation of the XC90 is a new heads-up display. I'll zoom in so you can see it right there. Right now we're just displaying the speedometer as well as the speed limit in our particular area. It's a little bit difficult to focus on that, but you can see what's going on there. Very similar to what you find in certain BMW models. Zooming out from that, we have Volvo's new corporate 3-spoke steering wheel. There is one large spoke right down there on the bottom, as you can see. We have our cruise control buttons on this side. Our model does have the optional radar cruise control, so we have distance buttons right there. And this model also is the first to have their autonomous driving system. So if you're on the highway going at speeds under about 30 miles an hour, you can click this little button right here, change over to the autonomous driving, set the system, and it will actually keep the vehicle up to about 31 miles an hour right in your lane. It'll actually steer the wheel into your lane without any driver interaction. On the right side, you'll find the page change button for certain options right there in the system, as you can see behind that, the voice command button, and the 4-way joystick with center click button. This also acts as track forward and backward. Behind that, you'll also notice that Volvo has redesigned their turn signal stalks as well. Taking a close-up look at the doors, you can really see what kind of quality is going on here. This definitely is the equal of the latest Mercedes models. We have a lot of open pore wood trim going on, the stitched leather on the doors, etc. It all works incredibly well with the metal trims going on down here. The door handles, the new window switches, etc. Volvo's first generation city safety system was a laser scanner and camera setup that was right here behind the windscreen. It's actually sort of between the windscreen and the rearview mirror in the vehicle. And it worked in coordination with the optional radar sensor for the optional radar cruise control in previous Volvo models. So depending on whether or not you got that radar cruise control, the system would behave a little bit differently. That's not going on in this generation of the XC90. Now, all those functions are standard. So pedestrian detection, cyclist detection, interactions in intersections when you're turning left, all of that is standard in this particular model up to 31 miles an hour. And the way they did it is they've actually removed the laser sensor from this vehicle, so we just have a camera, and we have a radar sensor right here in the windscreen. Now, radar cruise control is not standard, but that radar sensor is giving you that expanded city safety protection for autonomous braking. It also means that if you're in a minor front-end accident, it's going to be less expensive to repair because the radar sensor is right here, not right up there where it's going to get hit first. The full air suspension in the XC90 really is a unique option because when we're driving down roads like this gives you a much more controlled ride than any traditional suspension setup. Once we're out on a regular paved road, however, this air suspension doesn't feel floaty-boaty like you'd expect out of an air suspension. Based on a very brief experience at a dealer lot, I can tell you that this suspension is a little bit more polished than the regular steel spring setup. In addition to the more polished ride, this also allows us to choose a ride height based on the conditions. So if you do live out in the country and you're looking for something that can more easily get over a stick or a gravel road that's not quite perfect, or you have a driveway that's a little bit funny, that sort of thing, you can actually adjust the air suspension in this vehicle. Now, we don't have the same kind of adjustment that we get in the Grand Cherokee or in the Range Rover product line. We really only have the ability to raise the suspension for off-road use, lower it for parking, or have it automatically adapt. When the system is automatically adapting, it's trying to respond to driver input as well as the road surface, but it's also going to lower the vehicle's suspension when you reach a certain height in order to improve aerodynamics. That ability to adjust, especially the ability to lower for aerodynamics, is why we don't really get a reduction in the EPA score if you get the optional air suspension system, even though it does add a little bit of weight. As I said before, the XC90 is an all-new design for Volvo, and that includes the suspension architecture. This now uses a double wishbone suspension up front, not a McPherson strut, which is what you normally find in front-wheel drive biased or front-wheel drive based vehicles. A double wishbone suspension is more expensive, but it does give you a better ride out there on the highway. Double wishbones are normally what you find in most luxury vehicles. So that's really what separates this from something like a Toyota Highlander or a Kia Sorento or anything there in that upper end mass market segment, is we get a much more refined suspension design. That revised suspension and the 275 width tires make a big difference when it comes to handling, because the XC90 handles more like the X5 than you might think. When you take a look at the MDX or the QX60, they have much narrower tires, so we get less grip by default in those vehicles. But they also have V6 engines under the hood, and this has a very small 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, and that really improves the weight balance in the XC90 when you compare this to those other front-wheel drive entries. Obviously, we don't have the same kind of driving dynamics that we get in the X5 or in the Mercedes ML or the Mercedes GL, but this is definitely a notch above something like the MDX or the QX60. Surprisingly enough, I also find this a notch above the Audi Q7, and I don't expect it to change too much with the new Q7. The weight of the vehicle is certainly noticeable in acceleration because this will run from 0 to 60 in 6.1 seconds, which is actually a half second faster than a BMW X5 rear-wheel drive with the 3-liter Turbo 6. This is about a full second faster than a current generation Audi Q7 with the same amount of power under the hood. Now, the next generation Q7 has lost a significant amount of weight, but it will still be slightly heavier than this XC90, we're told. When it comes to cabin noise, I'm going to give this 8 out of 10 points. We don't get the same kind of cabin quietness that you do find in the X5 or the Audi Q7. That's largely because of these wide tires as well as the 4-cylinder engine. We get a little bit more noise out of this engine than we get in some of those competitive products, and the noise that does come out of the engine is not quite as refined. That's just an unfortunate side effect of having fewer cylinders under the hood. Of course, the other side effect to having fewer cylinders under the hood is that we get greatly improved fuel economy in this model. Volvo is saying this should get 22 miles per gallon average, and I have been averaging so far about 21.9 in very mixed driving, and of course we've been prodding this car a little bit harder than normal to try and see how well it performs out on these roads, so it's still a very good number. We don't have exact numbers on the T8 hybrid yet because it has not been EPA tested or verified, but Volvo tells us that in the European cycle, which is different than the US cycle, it achieved approximately 20% better fuel economy. How that will translate exactly to the EPA cycle, we don't really know, but you should probably expect between a 10 and 20% improvement. The big thing you'll notice about this 2-liter turbocharged and supercharged engine is how much it feels like Volvo's larger 3-liter turbocharged engine in the XC60. Turbochargers are usually more efficient in general terms than superchargers. However, superchargers give us a very big low-end bump in torque. So the supercharger is available right away to give us that large low-end torque that you expect in a big vehicle like the XC90. It gives us good off-the-line acceleration. But then once that supercharger is no longer needed, it actually declutches, takes itself out of the picture, and we're left with the turbocharger, which gives us better highway performance and better top-end performance. The combination really makes the XC90 feel incredibly peppy. Although I really like the look of the R design package, and the base Momentum trim does have excellent value behind it, I would probably get the Inscription trim. I would also really need to have the $1,400 Contour seats. They are absolutely the most comfortable seats you can get in this category. The $900 heads-up display is a decent option. The almost $3,000 Bauer and Wilkins sound system, I think I might skip that one. I'm not quite sure. It really does sound excellent, but I'd have to see what the base system sounded like first to see if it was a good deal. One really good deal, however, that surprised me is this $1,800 air suspension system, because it's not floaty-boaty like I expected out of this vehicle. It's definitely an $1,800 that I would spend if I was shopping for the XC90. If you think the hybrid is more your style, then you do need to be prepared to shell out an awful lot of cash. $68,100 is where the T8 will start. Now, it is a little bit tempting to try and compare the T8 hybrid to something like the Infiniti QX60 hybrid or even the Lexus RX hybrid, but they're very different kinds of vehicles. The QX60 hybrid is trying to give you about the same amount of power as you get in the regular QX60 with improved fuel economy. That means we get considerably less power in that model than we get even in the base T6 version of the XC90. T8 comparisons are obviously tricky, not just because this is the highest performing hybrid available in this segment right now, but because it's also the only plug-in hybrid. The QX60 and the Lexus are not plug-in vehicles. The T6 model we've been driving around today does seem to be a very good value, however. Although the current generation Audi Q7 at $48,300 does undercut this brand new XC90, you shouldn't expect the new 2016 Q7 to start that low. In fact, I expect that 2016 Q7 to end up right around $54,000 to $55,000, so it will be a decent price bump over the XC90. BMW's X5 comes in at $53,900, and although they handle relatively the same, which actually shocked me out on the road, this is actually faster 0 to 60 than that 3-liter X5. Obviously, if you're taking a look at the V8 twin-turbo version of the X5, then Volvo doesn't really have anything that competes directly with that at the moment, other than that T8 hybrid model. The Mercedes-Benz GL starts at $63,600, and the performance is relatively similar if you get the twin-turbo V8. Acura's MDX is a little bit less expensive than this, so is the Infiniti QX60. However, they're also kind of different vehicles because the XC90 picks up where the MDX leaves off in terms of luxury. So we don't get real wood trim on the inside of that vehicle, we don't get the upgraded leather, we don't get any of the luxury features and luxury gadgets and gizmos that you can get in the XC90. So the base version of the XC90 actually competes very well with some of the mid-range versions of the Acura MDX. So it's a little bit difficult if you're taking a look at a base MDX to a base XC90. Infiniti's QX60 has a different mission in mind. It is much softer than this. So if you're after the optimum in highway cruising, that's probably the model that I would get, even versus the XC90 with the air suspension. On the flip side, if you care about handling, then the XC90 would definitely be the option for you, especially the model we're taking a look at with these wide 275 width tires on it. These are much wider than any QX60 that you'll find out there, and the QX60 again is really tuned towards a softer highway ride. So it's definitely going to float a little bit more, it's going to roll a little bit more in the corners, it's going to tip and dive a little bit more when accelerating or when braking. So when can you see an XC90? Well, dealers should have them on the lots right now for test drives. If you ordered a first edition model, you should be able to get your hands on it in June. If you have ordered a T6 that's not the first edition, you should be able to get yours around July, depending on where you are in the United States. And the R-Design and T8 models should be available in the US by October. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, and this has been our quick look at the 2016 Volvo XC90 T6. If you want to know more about the XC90 T8, then there'll be a separate video on that. Be sure and check that out as well. And be sure and click that subscribe button at the bottom of your screen so you can be updated on all of my latest reviews, including the full review on the 2016 XC90 coming up very soon. I'll also have a separate child seat video at that time as well.